Hello, Liz. Liz, you raised your hand. Okay, well, it's 12 o'clock. I think we'll get started.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for giving up your time on, I think, a still blustery Friday in most parts of the country to take part in this webinar. We've got a really impressive turnout, so we're delighted that you've all found the time to take part. What we're going to just look at today is reimagining home care, and we're going to hear about emerging practice across the country, and in particular the work that Helen and Sanderson is taking forward with Wellbeing Teams. We're also going to hear about individual service funds and the important role they can play as a lever towards better home care. Just to say who I am, I'm Ewan King, Director at the Social Care Institute for Excellence. And for those of you who don't know us, we're a national charity involved in identifying and disseminating what works in adults and children's social care. And I'm really pleased that we've been joined today by Martin Walker from Think Local Act Personal. And we've got the banner behind us. And we've also got Helen Sanderson of Helen Sanderson's Associates. So that's really good. Just to give you a bit more in terms of background to this webinar, it's the first in a series of webinars, and we know that there'll be plenty of questions that you'll have for us about the wellbeing teams, and we may not be able to cover everything today. This is an introduction, and we might be able to hopefully explore aspects of that model in more depth at a future date. So this is the start of a journey. We hope to hear about other models of emerging practice on future webinars. So just to give you that context. I'm going to ask Martin and Helen just to introduce themselves.
Hi, yes, I'm Martin Walker from Think Local Act Personal, as you had said. Great to be here and sharing.
Helen?
Hi, I'm Helen Sanderson. I lead Helen Sanderson Associates, and I'm a trustee for community circles as well. Really delighted to be here.
Brilliant. So as I said, we've got a busy schedule. We may not be able to cover all of your questions, but please do send those questions and comments in. And what we will do, if we don't have enough time at the end to answer those questions, we'll endeavour to respond through a series of frequently asked questions at the end. We'll send that out with the slides and the video recording, so you should get all of the information. So if that's all right, I'm going to kick off. And I think my role today is to just set the scene a little bit about where home care is at the moment, touch on some of the research that we've done at SCIE, and identify some emerging trends taking place in home care, but also pick out a couple of promising models that we've come across. And then I'm going to hand over to Martin and to Helen. It's important to say this from the very beginning, I think, that home care is an absolute essential feature of a good health and social care system. It's really that broad. Good home care keeps people independent, resilient, connected, safe in their homes, in their communities for longer. It helps prevent people unnecessarily going into hospital or into institutional care, or at the same time helping people come out of hospital and rebuild their competence and skills and get back into the community way of life. So it is an absolute common good, an absolute public good that we should all be very proud of. The context, as I'm sure you're all aware from watching the news recently, is very, very difficult for social care as a whole, but actually domiciliary care, home care, has a claim to have an even tougher time of it right now. So we're seeing a very difficult funding settlement for home care providers. We've got a number of providers of home care who are concerned about the dropping values of their contracts and are really struggling to stay afloat in many cases. We've got an issue of quality. Obviously, 20% of dom care providers across the country being rated as requiring improvement is not where we want to be, and it's even worse in some places. So SCIE is doing some work on the adult social care strategy for Greater Manchester, and they've got nearly 50% of dom care providers requiring improvement. So real problems there. There's a real problem, as we're all aware, with low pay, endemic low pay and job insecurity across this sector. That is not easy, therefore, to recruit and retain and progress high quality workers. It's a real problem that we need to endeavour to tackle. And financial stability, as I've said, is a real concern. There are genuinely providers of home care going out of business, don't want to go out of business, but are really in a difficult situation, have to. And I've touched on the recruitment and retention problems earlier, a real problem. Thank you. So SCIE was part of a consortium that developed a National Institute for Clinical Excellence, NICE's guidance on good quality home care. And in doing that piece of work, we had to look at literally everything that was going on out there in terms of good home care. And we've also done a review, as I've said, for Greater Manchester, for the Welsh Government. And what is this review telling us? I think it's telling us that, thankfully, even though the difficult situation we face out there is tough, people and organisations are striving very hard to improve the quality of home care. What are the trends? What are the features of good quality home care? I think we'll hear more about this from Helen in relation to wellbeing teams. Well, I think firstly you'll see increasingly a person-centred approach. That's individuals, care workers working with people who receive care and their carers to provide care that meets their aspirations, goals, and priorities. So a much more personalised approach. There will be outcome focused, and that stretches down from the commissioning side of things. So you're seeing growth in outcome-based commissioning, not enough, but you're seeing some emerging outcome-based commissioning, and that feeds through into organisations delivering services that focus on well-being, on improving people's confidence, connectedness to friends and family, and outcome focused, not tasks necessarily payment by task. A strengths-based approach usually underpins this. So you're seeing organisations not just look at people as if they are a problem to fix, but actually look at people as those who have skills and networks that they can bring to bear. How can you, for example, build on the fact that someone's got a particular interest or skill when you're providing home care? How do you make the most of that? That's a strengths-based approach, and we're very, very strongly in favour of that at SCIE. Integration, you're seeing a trend, and if you look across sustainability and transformation plans, in some of them you'll see that home care is an essential feature of integrated community-based health and social care teams. We want to see more of that. And co-production is something that I know TLAP is very, very proud of, feels is very important. So co-production is basically organisations working with individuals to design and deliver high quality care. And Bertzog model, I'm going to leave Helen to talk about that in a bit more depth. It's a new model that's been taken seriously over here, and it's from Holland. So next slide. So I'm going to pick out just three examples of emerging practice that we think are interesting and worth further exploration. So British Red Cross is developing across the country, delivering a support at home programme, and it provides volunteers to support people for an intensive period of time, for what we call a enablement approach, to try and get people back on their feet, help them feel supported, connected to their community. So it's a really strong social isolation focus, trying to get people back into their networks, because that's how they stay safer and independent for longer. And the outcomes we've found are really pretty impressive on reducing falls, reducing depression, and keeping people away from unnecessary discharges into hospital. So good stuff there. So stabilise and make safe, this time in the Northwest, is another re-enablement type service, trying to get people through an intensive period of support back on their feet, supported and connected. And this is a really interesting approach, and there's similarities to aspects of the wellbeing teams that we're going to hear more about, because we have providers based in small geographical areas who really get to understand their client base and try to work with those local communities to provide a very, very personalised approach. The pricing model, the way in which it's set up, incentivizes outcomes and quality, and there is an investment in training and better pay than in most places. And you can see at the bottom there some very impressive outcomes. I'm aware of the time, so I'm just going to touch on one final example. Supercare is a very different model. This was set up by two brothers who were unhappy with the home care received by their mother, and they decided to set up an online platform, which is basically a brokerage which puts people who need home care in touch with people who are accredited to provide home care. And the people who provide it are quality assured, trained, and what is really important, they manage to pay their carers really pretty well compared to the market averages. And it's delivering a very, very impressive set of results so far, and is beginning to expand. It also uses a values-based approach to recruitment and retention, which I think Helen is very, very aware of as an important feature of her model. So aware of the time, I'm going to pass on to Martin, and thank you. I'm happy to take questions on that.
Okay, so thank you very much, Ewan. I'm going to just briefly talk about individual service funds, largely because they're a key element to one of the routes that people can take advantage of in terms of wellbeing teams. So individual service funds are one of the ways people can take a personal budget, one of the three ways specified in the Care Act. There's not a lot of information in the Care Act or the guidance, the statutory guidance about, they are referred to, but there's not enough detail really in those documents. So TLAP created some guidance last year, and you can access that guidance on the website. We did lots of work with the Centre for Welfare Reform on that, but we're also finding that, in a sense, that's not enough information about how to put them into practice as well. So we've been doing lots of work with other authorities, with a number of authorities in and around the country. So what are they? I've talked about that in terms of their way of taking the personal budget, the three ways. For those overseas, the direct payments, council managing budgets, individual service funds, there aren't many places up and down the country doing individual service funds well. There's three key things we want to make sure that we get over to you. Individual service funds won't help you with direct payments uptake. They are a service that's provided under contract between the council or statutory authority. This can work for health too, and the provider. The key feature is flexible support, so that people, so that support can be put in place on a day-to-day basis. One of the key features is often the time that the person visits can be flexed. So one day, half an hour might be needed to provide support. Another day, an hour. So there's flexibility, and that means that the providers need to be able to manage both the way they put support in place and the money. So this is a provider managed budget fund. So they're the three key features of an individual service fund. There are some implications for that contracting, importantly. So this needs a completely different approach to contracting. The kind of contracts that have been put in place to support individual service funds up and down the country, very simple framework kind of approach, and an agreement that enables the flexing to happen. So in an agreement for each individual person who wants an individual service fund, that agreement between the council. There are different ways of doing that. There's information on TLAP's website about those approaches. Assessment of care plan. What's really, really important is that what the Care Act says about a shift to focus on outcomes is very important. High-level outcomes shared with the provider, so that the provider can then take those outcomes and shape tailored support on a day-to-day basis with the person, not prescriptive support plans. We still are seeing fairly prescriptive support plans up and down the country as outputs of assessment. Obviously, there are some implications for procurement people to think about, where a provider may buy stuff that's not been contracted through local authority procurement processes. and there are implications for providers in shifting their accounting systems to individualised arrangements, and for recruitment issues in terms of, or implications in terms of getting the right people. Some of the benefits, though: control. Most importantly, some of the things that we've been trying to achieve through policy for some long time, people being much more in control of their care support situations, simplicity. There are significant efficiencies that could be generated through taking this approach, and improved outcomes for those people needing support. There are things that need to change right across the system. This means that trust will need to be built across many relationships between social workers and providers, between providers and people who need support, between procurement people and commissioning people. All sorts of trust that needs to be built to enable individual services to work well. Assessments, a shift, as I talked about, in the way in which assessments, the output assessment looks, and approaches to planning. So providers will under individual services do much more of the detailed planning with people, and a basic shift to that citizenship model that we have talked about, or that social model of disability. I think that's the end of my slide. So with no further ado, we'll pass over to Helen to talk about Wellbeing Teams.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be able to share this introduction to Wellbeing Teams. And if you're on Twitter and you want to tweet about this, Martin, you and I are all on Twitter, and I'm at Helen HSA UK. Ewan gave us some statistics, but let's look at one of the stories behind those statistics. This was in The Guardian in November last year, and it talks about the story of Jean. Jean, as you can see, starts work at 6:30 in the morning. She does 23 calls in 12 hours. She drives 20 miles between appointments and earns just £64.80 before tax. She's on a 0-hour contract and she's not paid for her travel time. Jean says it's stressful work and she feels she's got little support. It's a lonely job, she says. You're on your own, delivering care. You go to people's houses and you face problems on your own. They tell you all of their worries and then you take them home. Often at night, I'm tossing and turning, worrying about them. But the article ends with, but Jean still loves her job. And I think there are lots and lots of people delivering care in home care that, like Jean, are great care workers and want to do a great job. But the challenge is the system in which we're supporting people to deliver. And I think that's part of the reason why Buurtzorg is so popular at the moment, and there's so much interest in it, quite rightly. This is Jos de Blok, and he's the founder of Buurtzorg. He's a community nurse and got really fed up with the way that services were being delivered and wanted to do something different. And started off with a team of 4 community nurses, and 10 years later, there are over 10,000 nurses, all working in small self-managed teams of no more than 12 people. What's particularly important and interesting about this is the evaluation of it and the statistics. And this was done by KPMG and Ernst & Young. And they found that people who are receiving support by Buurtzorg have an incredibly high satisfaction rate, and staff are very satisfied as well. So as an organisation, they receive hundreds of CVs a week of nurses who want to come and work with them, and they regularly win best places to work. And then, of course, financially, the industry standard for those kinds of organisations are overheads of 25%. And because Buurtzorg is built on self-managed teams, their overheads are just 8%. So I was incredibly inspired when I read about this work in Frederic Laloux's book, Reinventing Organisations, but also recognising that you can't just import a model like that to England because our context is very different. Our context, as Martin and Ewan have said, is around personalisation, about making sure we're supporting people to have as much choice and control in their lives as possible. We're working in the context of the Care Act, which introduces the wellbeing principle and requires that we focus on aspirations and outcomes. And as Martin says, part of the way that we can enable people to have greater choice and control in their lives is through personal budgets, and one way of receiving a personal budget is through an individual service fund. So here are the questions that myself and some colleagues started to ask. How can we give people choice and control and improve health and well-being? Can we create in this country effective self-managed teams? Can we focus on outcomes and not just hours? And how can we make something work for both people who are funding their own care and people whose funding comes through councils, through ISFs or direct payments? So what I want to explain is the way that we are structuring and organising this, and what it means for people who are receiving supports, and what it means for staff and colleagues too. So in terms of how we're organising support, wellbeing teams are small, self-managed teams. There are no more than 12 people in each team. And each team also includes a community circle connector, and I'll talk a bit more about their role in a minute. We focus on bringing the whole person to work. And what that means is we know what matters to each individual, and we can pay attention to that. And we know the best ways to support each person. And each wellbeing team is based in a very closely and clearly defined neighbourhood. Now, what this means for how support is delivered is it's absolutely rooted in co-production. And that means that we focus on the person's priorities and their outcomes. The service is co-designed with the person, and we even go as far as them choosing their own team. The whole person focus extends to the individuals we support, of course, and that means we start with a strengths-based and asset-based approach, where we find out what matters to the person, their relationships, their assets, where they go in the community, their pace of life. We really know what matters to people. And we pay attention to the 5 ways to well-being, and we embed that in the way that the service is designed and delivered. We also proactively build capacity, the individual's personal capacity and connection with the community, and using community resources and staying in touch with friends and family and neighbours too. And the way that we do that is through something called the support sequence. And you've just heard Ewan talk about the importance of a reablement approach, and this is rooted in reablement principles. So as we're starting to design the service with the individual around their priorities and outcomes, we start with self-care. So we ask what we could be doing to support the person to have either more confidence or feel more confident in being able to manage their own long-term conditions or their situation. We never use the term self-care, but we start off by looking at confidence. Then we ask the question about whether assistive technology could support the person to achieve their outcomes. And we have a really broad approach to assistive technology. Assistive technology for us includes apps and Skype and different ways of staying connected, as well as assistive technology around health and safety. Then we ask about friends, family and community and what their involvement could be, if asked, around helping to deliver the person's priority and outcomes. And everybody in a wellbeing team gets offered a community circle to support them to bring together friends and family and to connect with the community and make the most of community resources. Because the next level, number 4, is are we making sure that the person is using the services that we all use in the community, and also what's specifically available for that individual. And then finally, we work out with the individual what the role of the wellbeing workers could be, and they choose their own team. Now, community circles are absolutely central to wellbeing teams, but they exist in their own right as well. There are community circles in care homes, in communities, and supported by providers as well. But this is just to evidence that community circles are evidence-based practice, and this is the research done by the London School of Economics. So let me just introduce you to community circles through this short animate, and we can send all the animates and films that I'll be using to you afterwards.
I've always been close to my mum, Olive. She's always been a confident lady, but when she left hospital after a fall, her confidence was really knocked. The jobs she needed help with were small, but they soon started piling up. Me and my husband Brian could only visit about once a week. I suspected other friends and family wanted to help out, but it felt awkward to ask, and I wasn't sure I even had the time to keep track of everything. When I called the council, they told me Mum didn't qualify for funded support yet, but they emailed me about community circles. Mum and I agreed that it could really help us out, so we phoned the local Community Circles connector, Kath. She came over for a cup of tea to explain how it would work. We thought about everyone who might be interested in joining Mum's community circle. Mum got to choose a local facilitator, Lucy. She's there to help the community circle work towards its purpose of supporting Mum to live well at home. The community circle has monthly meetings round the kitchen table with Mum, me, Lucy, Amir, Samira and Brian talking about what needs to be done. The meetings are great, friendly, informal, and a good way to get everything organised. We use Rally Round to write down anything that needs doing. This way, we can keep track of jobs, and other members of the community circle who can't make the meeting can be involved too. We all choose what to take responsibility for. And when it's done, we cross it off the list. This way, everyone can see what jobs need doing, who's doing what, and when they've done it. Regular emails keep us in the loop, and the mobile app helps us do it all on the move. Lucy, the community circle, and keeping track of actions on Rally Round has totally taken the pressure off me and made sure everyone's doing their bit. The whole system is safe and private, which means it's not just old people that can benefit. It's great for anyone who's vulnerable and needs a little extra help. Thanks to community circles and Rally Round, Olive now has a crack team taking care of her. Everyone feels included and makes a contribution which helps us all feel useful. No one gets too stressed, and Mum never feels like a burden.
So that's a quick overview of the different ways that community circles can work. But not everybody has lots of friends and family in their life like Olive does. Now, where they do have that, the wellbeing teams have a role of making sure friends and family stay connected and are contributing alongside paid staff to enabling people to live well at home. And if people don't have friends and family in their lives, and we know loneliness is a huge problem, the wellbeing workers and the community circle connectors bring volunteers and other people into the person's life. So we've heard about how this works for Olive. Let's now look at what this could mean for Norma, who's a self-funder, and for Joan as well. So this is some of the nuts and bolts about how wellbeing teams work.
Wellbeing teams are a new way to deliver home care. They are small, self-managed neighbourhood teams inspired by Bert's, and they can work both with self-funders or people funded with a personal budget, for example, through an ISF. Let's look at what this would mean for Norma. So at the very first meeting, Claire, the Link Wellbeing worker, meets Norma to really find out what matters to her, the relationships that matter to her, the places that matter to her, the small things that matter to her as well. They also look at Norma's outcomes and priorities, and this involves looking at what's working and not working for Norma and establishing her priorities. Then they explore different ideas for designing her service together. We use something called a support sequence. That means we start off by thinking about self-care. Then where can assistive technology help? What the role of family, friends or community could be, and this is where we introduce community circles. And then the role of the wellbeing workers. This gets put into a weekly plan. Norma is supported to choose her own team by two different means, either sharing one-page profiles or one-minute films. And at the end of that meeting, and of course that might take a couple of meetings, then Norma's one-page profile, her team profile, and her care and support plan and contract are then shared with Norma to confirm their agreement. Norma's service will then start, and what's really different here is Claire does not hand over the service to someone else. Claire then works with the team directly and is part of Norma's team too. At the 6-week review, we check up on the actions and also look at what's working and not working from Norma's perspective and the team's perspective as well, and update the information we have. We also ask another question here: if I could, I would, to see what else Norma might be interested in doing in relation to feeling like she has a meaningful life and meaningful days. And of course, it's unlikely that it'd be possible to achieve that just through existing services. So this is where we really introduce community circles. And the community circle connector is there to explore with Norma what a circle could mean for her and to start to put that together. So community circle involves friends and family and community members around a clear purpose that the person identifies, facilitated by a volunteer facilitator. So then the community circle will start, and 6 months later there's a more formal person-centred review, where again we check actions, update what's working and not working, and this brings together both the team supporting Norma, the wellbeing team members, and the community circle as well. Information from the 6-month review also informs Working Together for Change, which is a co-produced process where Norma's information goes to inform the direction of the team and the service overall. Now this would look exactly the same if we're providing the service to Joan with an individual service fund. The difference would be that the social worker would have identified Joan's outcomes and her indicative allocation, and Claire and Joan would build on those outcomes and establish what other priorities Joan would have to design the service together. So wellbeing teams have different conversations with people about what really matters to them. They're rooted in co-production, so people design their service together and even choose their team, as well as having a way of contributing to the direction of the service and the team through Working Together for Change. The other difference is the use of the support sequence, which is thinking about self-care first, assistive technology, the roles of friends, family and community, as well as thinking about the outcomes for each wellbeing worker's visit. So wellbeing teams deliver a flexible, person-centred service that's focused on outcomes, not hours.
So let me tell you a bit about how we support people to choose their own team. We guarantee with wellbeing teams that nobody is supported by more than 4 people, and in reality it might only be 2 or 3. The induction for wellbeing teams, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a few minutes, includes us recording 30 seconds to a minute introductory video. And I must admit, we spend a lot of time laughing around this to try and stop it sounding like a dating agency. So let me introduce you to Annie, and you can see whether you think we've managed that or not. Meet Annie.
Hi, I'm Annie. 3 things that matter to me are art. I've got a degree in ceramics and I've always loved painting and drawing. I don't have time to make pots anymore, but at the moment I'm illustrating a children's book and I really enjoy that. I also really enjoy cookery. I enjoy all types of cookery. I'm not very good at baking cakes, but I love different cultures and finding out how they cook. And that brings me to my 3rd thing that I really love, and that's travelling. I travelled a lot in my 30s and I'd love to do that again. But at the moment I love travelling around this country and seeing what it has to offer. Which is a great thing.
So as well as thinking differently about how people can be in control of their service by designing it together, looking at the support sequence and choosing their own staff, we're also trying to think differently about how we stay connected with families in a way that the person wants and makes sense to them. So on the left, you'll see Keeping Up with Norma, and that's a closed Facebook group for Norma and her family that the wellbeing team members can post to photos, ideas, what Norma's up to, with Norma's permission, of course, and using Norma's own words or Norma doing it herself. So that's ways that we can think really differently about staying connected with families. And the other is a postcard. I'm a part of May's community circle. And every time May and I are together, we take some photos and I create a postcard where I send it to May's family so that they know what we're up to, because May's not able to tell them themselves. So lots of different ways that we can think about staying in contact with families. So in summary, this is how wellbeing teams are trying to work to deliver differently with and for individuals through working in partnership with community circles, which is absolutely central to the model. It means that we can build social capital together. And the wellbeing teams focus on outcomes, not hours, through personalised support and focusing on the support sequence, which of course is a strategy around prevention. By doing this, we address what Atal Gandhi talks about as the three scourges of old age: loneliness, boredom, and helplessness. And of course, we can add in poor health to that as well. And what we know is if we start addressing loneliness for people, that changes in loneliness have been shown to improve health, because being lonely is the equivalent on your health of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But that's only half the story. The well-being in wellbeing teams is both for the individuals who are supported and the colleagues who provide that support as well. And one of the biggest challenges facing home care is recruitment and retention, which can be up to 40% or more. So how can we recruit great staff and support their well-being? Well, we're really focused on using value-based recruitment and value-based support. And in order to find people who want to work in self-managed teams, we knew we had to recruit and support people really, really differently. And one of the ways that we've been doing this is through an animated advert. And this is for our team in Torquay.
Are you looking for a role with more control over how you work? Perhaps you'd like a job with security, where you can grow and develop your skills and experience. Or do you want a job where you know you're making a difference? We're looking for wellbeing workers to help people live well in their own home. Whether you've worked in care before or are new to this type of work, if you're passionate about people and share our values, we could have the opportunity for you. Our values are compassion, responsibility, curiosity, creativity, and working in ways where everyone can flourish. The service is new and innovative, and we need amazing people to join our team to bring it to life. We'll provide full training and personal development opportunities to help you grow. This video explains a little bit more about what we do. We talk about what a wellbeing worker's role looks like and how wellbeing teams work differently. And if this sounds interesting, we'd love for you to give us a call for a chat to find out more. How do we achieve true well-being? Is it about being safe and well? Perhaps it's about doing more of what matters to you, or staying connected to important people in your life. We think it's about bringing all three together. That's where well-being happens, and that's why we created wellbeing teams. So what does a wellbeing worker do? As a wellbeing worker, you'll support people to achieve all three of these elements. You'll be expected to get to know people really well, and together with them, you'll design their care and support. Then you'll work as part of a team, chosen by the person to deliver that plan. It could include anything from helping a person with personal care, such as washing or dressing, administering medication, or preparing meals. And as well as these tasks, you'll be supporting people to do more of what matters to them in partnership with the charity community circles. That could be getting out and about, starting a new hobby, or reconnecting with a faith community. Together, this helps us combat the four big challenges of old age: loneliness, boredom, feeling of helplessness, and poor health. Does this sound good to you? If you want a rewarding career that enables you to develop your skills as well as helping older people, then we'd really love to hear from you. Wellbeing teams focus on the well-being of the people we support and your well-being too. Because we're people, we'd rather you get in touch for a chat instead of sending an application form to get started. So get in touch today and let's start talking about how we can help people achieve real well-being together.
So we've tested 4 different adverts and 4 different ways of recruiting people to find out which works best. And the very first time we did this, we advertised on Indeed, and we had 60 inquiries. We were really pleased about that. We asked people not to send CVs and not to fill in application forms, but the very first thing is to give us a ring and have a chat. Because in values-based recruitment, we want to see people's values first, not look at their skills and experience. So what happened then is that 30 people contacted us for telephone interviews, so that was really good. And on the basis of that, we sent people a recruitment pack. The recruitment pack includes the one-page profiles of the team who were doing the recruitment workshop, and this is co-produced with older people, so you get the one-page profiles of the older people involved as well. And we also asked people to do their own one-page profile. Now, the very first time we did this, we were working with an organisation who both delivered traditional home care and was starting one of the first wellbeing teams. They were also recruiting to their traditional home care team, and Geraldine, the registered manager, also put an advert on Indeed for their other teams and invited 5 people for interviews. The interviews happened about 4 days before we did the recruitment workshop for the wellbeing teams, and only one person turned up. And the person turned up said, "I don't really know why I'm here. I have to come because the job centre makes me." And apparently that is really quite a common experience. So what we ask people to do is 4 days before the recruitment workshop, we ask people to phone and confirm. So out of the 30 people who'd received the application packs, 10 people phoned to confirm. Then on the day, 9 people turned up. I can't tell you how worried I was. This is why I don't hold parties. I'm so worried about whether people would turn up or not. And at 9:45, there was still only 5 of us in the room, and 4 of us were part of the recruitment workshop team. But 9 people turned up by 10 o'clock for starting, and the person who didn't had phoned to apologise because he'd had a family crisis. And from those 9 people, we then appointed 5. Let me show you how.
Involved with the wellbeing recruitment. Really enjoyed
So I've been learning lots about values recently, and I've been working with Helen, who's one of the international experts in this area. And she says that values live in the limbic system, and it's not possible to have values simply by thinking about them. So we use one of the world's leading profiling instruments for values, the AVI, to explore the actual values of a wellbeing team. And the AVI draws upon the 128 different values in the Monescence Values Framework. So after we've recruited people, before induction, we got them all to use this profile, and then looked at the team values that the team had. This is what we came up with. So here are the values. I must admit I was delighted when I saw that, and it for me builds on the fact that by recruiting to values, we're getting people for whom human rights and human dignity and care are the key things that matter to them as well. It's all very well getting the right staff, but training and supporting them, well, that's something else to really pay attention to. So we have a 4-day induction program. The first 3 days, we look at purpose, around self-management, around delivering to outcomes, around the support sequence. We cover the care certificate as well, and we do that through e-learning before people get started with us. And we ask people to co-design the day 4 of the induction as well, to get people started as a self-managed team. So here's a snippet of the first day of the induction. So this is a snapshot of what we'll be covering and what we have covered on the 4 days of the induction. Values, individual purpose to team purpose, co-creating team agreements, looking at something called non-violent or compassionate communication, the team roles, strengths, practicing a really different kind of meeting process, learning to deliver the support and the initial conversations, the critical importance of being able to give each other feedback, mapping the community and community navigation, and finally the team designed their own team day 4 with us. We pay as much attention to how we're supporting the team to work differently and be supported and keep growing and developing. And here's just the 8 different ways that we're trying to achieve this.
Wellbeing teams offer a fresh approach to home care that's different in 2 ways: how people are supported and how the team works together. The wellbeing in wellbeing teams stands for both people supported and for team members. You cannot do one without the other. There are 8 ways that self-managing wellbeing teams are structured and supported. The first is the handbook and person-centered team plan. These are the 2 important documents that describe the way that the team works. Team members have a copy of the Wellbeing Workers Handbook, and each team co-creates their own person-centered team plan. Together, they form the basis of the induction. For each new team member, this is a completely different way of working, and the handbook is a way to explain what this means, so people can keep coming back to it until it becomes second nature. Whilst the handbook is standard, every person-centered team plan is different, as it's created by the team as their personal way of working together, and it starts through the induction. For example, a team plan will include 1-page profiles for each team member, people's individual purpose and the co-created team purpose, individual and team values and strengths, team agreements, how we're going to work together, how we're going to give each other feedback, how we stay in touch as well. The person-centered team plan is kept updated and live in 2 ways: through the development sessions in team meetings and through the person-centered team review every 6 months. The second way is roles. As the team manages itself, there are specific roles that managers would have done that the team does themselves. Some of these are shared roles and others are taken by different individuals. The role that's shared in a wellbeing team is the role of the link wellbeing worker for each individual who's supported. The other roles are for meeting facilitator and development, community navigator, scheduler, that's doing the rotas, and assistive technology. The decision about who does which role is made during induction based on strengths and interests. People take roles for about 6 to 12 months, and the person who's taken the role then becomes the coach for the next person who takes the role on. The third way is coaches, and there are two kinds of coaches in wellbeing teams. There are short-term coaches for the specific roles and an overall team coach. For each of the roles we mentioned, there's a coach who has expertise in that area. For example, the community navigator role is coached by the community circle connector. This coach's role is to support the new team member for 2 to 3 months until they're competent and confident in that role. The overall team coach is a registered manager who supports the team through induction and ensures that each person is competent in their role as a link wellbeing worker and passes the care certificate. Then her role is to be available to support the team to problem solve. Team coaches are not decision makers, but they can facilitate problem solving and offer advice if asked, but the decision always stays with the team. The fourth way is buddies. Unlike the short-term role of coaches, each team member has a buddy within the team, another team member. The purpose of having a buddy is to both support and challenge each other and to provide feedback. People choose their own buddies, and together they work out how to stay connected and how often. The fifth way is various ways to stay connected. For example, the team uses the top-rated app Slack to stay in touch. Each team has its own channel for team communication, and there are also channels for people who fulfill the same roles across different teams. For example, there's a channel called Community, where the community circle connectors and the community navigators across a range of teams connect to share tips or ask questions. The sixth way is through team meetings, and the team meeting process combines positive and productive meetings and elements of the holacracy tactical meetings. So this includes a review of actions and metrics to look at team performance, updates on any changes for each person supported by the relevant link wellbeing worker. And then the two main areas of the team meeting are raising and addressing tensions, problems or issues, and a development session. The development sessions are to continue to develop as individuals, to deepen the team's understanding of each other and keep developing and improving how we work together. At the end of each session, the team meeting facilitator will check whether the team has learned or changed anything that means that the person-centered team plan needs to be updated. The seventh way is through scenarios. Each fortnight, there's an hour's session via video conferencing to look at scenarios. Scenarios are real situations that have happened, and the team reviews the situation and what they could learn from this. This could be how to improve an outcome or other ways to solve a problem, or practicing moving from outcomes using the support sequence. Team members present their situation and the coach works with the group to facilitate, support and challenge. This is how the team keeps developing its practice, using real-world situations so they can practice thinking creatively and solving problems in new ways, as well as getting feedback. And finally, the eighth way is through the person-centered team review. Every 6 months, the team coach facilitates a person-centered team review. This means looking at what's working and not working from different team members' perspectives in relation to living the team's purpose, the team's agreements, roles, and processes. This leads to the team agreeing their own outcomes and actions for the next 6 months and updating the team plan to reflect this. The design of the structure and support for wellbeing teams is inspired by Birdsong and draws heavily on our existing work on person-centered teams, Daniel Pink's work on motivation, and Keegan and Leahy's deliberately developmental organisations. These 8 ways are how we put the well-being for staff in wellbeing teams.
And if you think back to the article in The Guardian that I shared right at the beginning, Jean said she was lonely and she didn't feel like she had much support. And those 8 ways are designed to try and change that experience for people. Now, as Ewan said at the beginning, best practice in home care is also about looking at integration. And the Doncaster Wellbeing team is working in partnership with the Scott GP practice to offer a way of integrating health and social care, working in partnership with community matron there and community circles as well. And we're also having conversations about an integrated team in Devon, and there's a possibility of an integrated team in Cheshire as well. So really excited about those potential developments. Now, my colleague James Cuthbert said to me, Helen, the world does not need any more pilots. How can we make this happen at scale? So James and I have been thinking about different ways of doing that, and we think there might be 4. So the first way is our website will be up and running in 2 months' time, and we're going to be making all the materials that we're using open source through Creative Commons, and that means you can download them from the website. So the Animate that you just looked at, we talked about the handbook for Wellbeing Teams. That will be available for people to download and have a look at. For some people, that might be all they need to get started to move in this direction, and that would be brilliant. For other people, they might need a bit more support. So we're going to offer a membership site with 2 levels of membership for you to join and have regular webinars and conversations and get more support to move in this direction if that's what you want to do. If that still doesn't feel like enough support, we'll have a support package. We've got 4 advisors to Wellbeing Team franchises and to Wellbeing Teams generally who can provide support, training, consultancy to help people who want to move in this direction. And then the final way is that Wellbeing Teams will be offered as a social franchise. And that means, like other franchises, you pay some money and you get the support to put this into operation. And of course, the rate of new businesses failing is over 50% in the first 4 years, and the rate of franchises failing is just 4%. So we think that offers a much better way of helping people to do this at scale. So different ways that people can get support to move in this direction. And the 5 teams that are currently getting started or operating, 2 of them are existing home care providers who are setting up separate wellbeing teams, and the others are new franchises who have started out and have gone through CQC registration. And this is one of them. This is the website of our colleagues of Love to Care, who are the first franchisees in Devon, and we're proud and excited to be working with them. Now, David and Maddie, who lead Love to Care, David and I spent a lot of time just before Christmas going through all the requirements of CQC and looking at how those could be delivered through wellbeing teams. We have a document that's over 120 pages long explaining how this can happen. And this is a summary or part of a graphic summary that we did to explain that. And we were delighted when Love to Care successfully registered with CQC earlier this year. This is my colleague Jeff Mark, who's the commissioner who's supporting this work in Scotland. And I think this is quite an inspiring quote from Jeff to say that actually instead of trying to make the existing system better, trying new things that recognise and build on the commitment of staff, rather than looking at just logistical and procedural challenges, might be the way forward. And we're working with Jeff and the 2 organisations in Dumfries to look at option 2, which is the Scottish equivalent of individual service funds. So this is my personal aspiration, that it won't be too long before we're seeing a very different kind of piece in The Guardian that might talk about a new experience for Jean. Because wellbeing team members are on salaries, they are paid travel time, they work as part of their team, up to 25% of their time is off rota to enable them to be part of team meetings and to fulfil their roles. They deliver on outcomes, and Jean's wellbeing will be taken care of as well. And you might be thinking, well, that's all great, Helen, but where is that really happening in practice, and what's the evidence? Well, the 5 teams that we're working with, as I said, are getting started right now. And we're talking with our colleagues at Love to Care of having an opportunity to come and meet the teams and hear what they're doing and learning about the outcomes, and perhaps talking to some of the people that we're supporting. And that will be in June this year, to give them 3 or 4 months to really, really get going. And if you're interested in that, please let us know and we can invite you to that. We're also exploring the possibility of wellbeing teams outside of home care. And frankly, if we can make them happen in home care, then the ability to support people with disabilities in other contexts, or hospices at home, or virtual wards, I think all those are possible. with self-managed teams. And right at the beginning, I gave you some statistics about Buurtzorg and that the standard industry office costs and costs around supporting the organisation are 25% generally, and Buurtzorg have got their overhead costs down to 8%. The overhead costs for wellbeing teams are 11%. Now, there's lots of information we could provide you about the financial modelling, how we manage risk, and how all this is structured. So again, as Martin and Ewan said right at the beginning, if you're interested in learning more about wellbeing teams alongside other great initiatives around home care, we'd be delighted to do another detailed webinar for people who really want to know the nuts and bolts of the detail of that. But in the meantime, please feel free to email me if there's specific questions you'd like to ask. Although again, as Martin said, we're going to put together quite a big frequently asked questions of your questions and the questions that other commissioners have been asking us as well, so that we can create that as a resource for you. My personal blog is helensanderson.net, and we're blogging about our experience, and the website will be up in a couple of months as well. Ewan and Martin, bang on 1 o'clock, and hand back over to you now.
Sorry, we might just need to repeat that because we were muted. Sorry. You just want to just sorry about
so
that.
Just thank you for everyone for the contributions from Helen and from Martin. As Helen said, we've run out of time, but we will send around the slides in full. We will send around answers to your frequently asked questions, and there'll be more from us soon in terms of further webinars. So stay in touch, and thank you very much. Cheers.
Bye.